In less than 3 days, rebel forces captured more than 10 towns in Syria, including Aleppo, the country's second largest city. This came barely 24 hours after America announced a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah on November 26, 2024. To make matters worse, the Syrian army fled the battleground.
It's the largest offensive against the Syrian government in years and has led to it withdrawing its troops from the city.
Syria's President Bashar al-Assad is strongly backed by Russia, Iran and Hezbollah. Assad controls 70% of Syria. The roughly 30% of the country not under Assad is controlled by the US, Turkey and other opposition forces. So why did the rebels decide to attack at this time? And why are there many foreign troops in the country? Assad has been at war with opposition forces seeking his overthrow for 13 years, a conflict that has killed an estimated 500,000 people. It all began in 2011 when successful uprising that became known as the Arab Spring toppled Tunisia's and Egypt's president. That March, peaceful protests erupted in Syria as well, after 15 boys were detained and tortured for writing graffiti in support of the Arab Spring. One of the boys, a 13-year-old, was killed after being brutally tortured. The arrest sparked outrage and demonstration throughout Syria. The Syrian government, led by President Bashar al-Assad, responded to the protests by killing hundreds of demonstrators and imprisoning many more. The unrest spread and the crackdown intensified, including President Barack Obama calling for Assad to step down. As protests intensified, the authorities cracked down, and within months, the opposition descended into fighting. Opposition supporters took up arms, first to defend themselves and later to rid their areas of security forces. The violence rapidly escalated and the country descended into a civil war. Hundreds of rebel groups sprung up, and it did not take long for the conflict to become more than a battle between Syrians and Assad. Foreign powers began to take side, sending money, weapons and fighters. And as the chaos worsened, extremist jihadist organizations with their own aims, such as the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, became involved. The opposition forces, made up of different factions but with a common goal of toppling Assad, were supported in various ways by foreign powers including neighboring Turkey, regional giant Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, as well as the United States. As the anti-government forces grew, Syria's allies, Iran and Russia, stepped up their support. On the ground, Iran's Revolutionary Guard as well as its Lebanese proxy Hezbollah helped fight the armed rebel groups. In the skies, the Syrian Air Force were boosted by Russian warplanes. In 2020, Russia and Turkey agreed a ceasefire in the last remaining opposition-held province, Idlib, agreeing to establish a security corridor with joint patrols. The conflict has been largely dormant since then, but opposition forces have maintained control of the northwestern city of Idlib and much of the surrounding province. Even before the civil war, many Syrian citizens were dissatisfied over the government's incompetency, the people's lack of freedoms and the general living conditions in their country. A lagging economy, high unemployment, government corruption and a severe drought were other issues that generated frustration among people under Assad's rule. Another problem was a tense religious atmosphere in the country. Most Syrians are Sunni Muslims, yet Syria's government is dominated by members of the Shia Alawite sect. Tensions between the two groups is an ongoing problem throughout Syria and other nations in the Middle East. During the height of the conflict in Syria nearly a decade ago, Aleppo was divided between government-controlled and rebel areas, but with the help of Russian air power and the Lebanon-based militant group Hezbollah, the regime of Bashar al-Assad was able to regain control over the entire city by the end of 2016. In the years since, Assad has proved unable to reconstitute his own army into an effective fighting force and instead remains heavily dependent on outside help. Unlike at the height of Syria's civil war, when the Lebanese Hezbollah group's well-trained fighters bolstered the flagging army to ensure Assad's survival. The Iran-backed organization is now recapitulating after an assault from Israel on the home front. How and when Iran may step up to aid Assad remains unclear. Weapons and money have long flow from Iran across Syria's border to Hezbollah in Lebanon. It remains to be seen how forcefully Iran would intervene to try to reverse the rebels' latest gains. Russia and Syrian jets responded by striking the rebel-held city of Idlib on Sunday, pushing back the insurgents. Now there is a question about whether these opposition fighters can maintain their momentum and strengthen their position, possibly launching more attacks on important targets. Russia is facing difficulties in Ukraine and has pulled back some of its efforts from Syria. The situation is now very unstable and unpredictable right now. While the rebel advances challenge the existing power dynamics, it's still unclear if this represents a real setback for the government or if it marks the beginning of a larger conflict.